Hello, I am Morten. I am Senior Support Consultant with the Customer Experience team here at ClickLearn. And, welcome to the release notes for ClickLearn Attain version 12.1.64.0. This update brings new features, improvements, and many important fixes to make your daily work smoother. Let's get started. For projects, you can now choose an updated list of F&O versions when you create a new project or if you're updating your project settings. And just to show you how that looks like, basically when you create a new project for F&O, you will now see all the different versions. So let's choose F&O down here, and then here you go. Now you have all of the most recent versions of F&O, right? So beforehand, it would just say AX7 if it was not the old school AX 2012, right? So that was it. For recordings, when you add or update metadata in a recording, the changes now appear instantly in recording lists without needing to refresh. As long as the column is there, of course, right? So just to show you what that means, basically when you come into a project that has metadata enabled, and you go to the column chooser, and you have some of these columns enabled here. Yeah, here's one for revision, for example. You can see now this is version 1.3. If I was updating this metadata for this recording, it would instantly update here without me having to click on refresh or open and close the project or whatever have you. For the recording editor, we've made several improvements to make editing steps easier and more reliable. This one is one that I'm very happy about, and that is that keyboard steps no longer show an image editing option because they are using the screenshot from the previous step. So as you probably know, when you click on an input field and then you type something on your keyboard, then the step itself, that is the keyboard input, would use the previous steps, hotspot and location and everything, right? And people would have a hard time understanding why they couldn't adjust the keyboard step. And nothing happened when they did adjust it. So now we just removed the option because it does nothing, right? Which is super nice. So a little less explaining and a little more clear, like how the program actually works. You know, you can't do something that has no effect, and I think that's a very good thing. When you use the target open for editing, previously the tags were shown as plain text. This is now fixed and the tags will display correctly. And that one, let's just have a quick look here. So if I'm adjusting a recording here, let's edit a step down here, click on the field credit limit. If I click on target open for editing, you will of course see the tag. If I click on full editing, you will also see the tag. Okay, so beforehand, this would be converted to text and then bolded, right? Which meant that when you did translations or multi-language stuff or whatever, this would actually be translated rather than using the technical name from the system, which also meant that if you overrode all of this and did a replay, it would not update the value, right? Because you've overwritten the instruction text instead of it relying on the tag from the system. So very good change, very, very good change. Cropping an image in a group step now saves properly. A lot of you probably know, but we have an issue where if you are editing a group step, we're editing the image, it would just not update. So that was super annoying. That's been fixed. Then we had screen flickering during video playback, specifically when you are excluding or deleting steps. That's also been fixed. Again, it's been a problem once in a while in the past. I cannot say it's not going to be a problem in the future, but it's been fixed again. So there we go. And when you fully edit a step, you can now see the tag for each value. We just saw that, which is super nice. And you can no longer create new options for predefined metadata when on-the-fly editing is turned on. So in the metadata settings, there is an option called on-the-fly editing. In that, you could actually create new options, but that's disabled now. So it was causing some confusion, and it's fixed. And a really cool one for UXP users or UAC users, the topic metadata now shows the default content. by default, which is super great. So basically, when you record, or when you have, let's say you add a recording to a project that has UXP enabled, once you've produced said project and go and edit the steps, you will now see that the topic metadata is filled out everywhere, which is very nice when you want to map it for when you want to map for specific user roles and stuff like that, right? Because sometimes you would have a recording and you were not sure how to control it because you weren't sure like what concept was being used and which role was shown up for. You can now map it right. And of course, you can also group it with this UXP grouping option, where that maps the content. You have all kinds of cool possibilities now. That's a thing. Structure can now save translated alternative titles correctly, and basically you can directly translate the alternative titles. Well, that's all good and fine, but when you clicked on save, it wouldn't actually not save it, so that's been fixed. That's great. You can actually do it directly in the editor now as well, which is super cool. I could just quickly show you. So if I come into a multi-language project, if I go to the alternative title metadata, I can now say, hey, I need to localize this. And let's do that into French. I'll click on the localization button, or auto translate or whatever. And it will then fix it, right? So now it says, créé un webinaire du Umbraco. Pardon my French. So that's also a thing now. For the structure, when you re-import a structure, it would now check that there are no duplicate LRUPs at the same level. We had the issue before where it would actually duplicate LRUPs, and that has devastating effect on the actual content, right? Because if it's using the same URL, it's not gonna work right. For localization, you can now auto-translate all items at once, even if you have multiple pages of items in the list. There was a bug where you could only do one page at a time, which was super annoying if you had tons and tons of items to translate. So you could only do 100 at a time, even though you had maybe multiples of thousands to do. That's fixed now. Once again, you can do everything at once. And when you replay a recording, this status will now be updated correctly. Sometimes we had a bug where it said replay needed, even though you just did, right? Even though you ran the analyzer, it would still say replay needed. That's been fixed. For the assets, the counter actually works correctly now. And I am just going to show you, because when I tell you the counter is working correctly, it might cause a little bit of confusion. If you come into your assets folder here and you go into any folder, you can kind of see, okay, inside of this folder, there are 5 folders and 1 asset. All right, great. Let me go in there. Inside of this folder, sales document, there are 0 subfolders, but there is 1 asset and so on, right? So that's been fixed. Super nice. For the dashboard, OData now records clicks on added hyperlinks, which is really cool. So if you use hyperlinks on your structure, and that could of course be it could be links to a web page, it could be linked to an asset, it could be a video dropped in there, or a Word document, or whatever. OData now records it, and you can track it. Okay, and it will also display the structure name correctly. We had an issue where sometimes the structure name was just missing, so that's been fixed. And then we had an issue where it would show multiple profiles in the USB dashboard for a user, and that's also been fixed now. So it's a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to see and easier to get an overview of what's what. For publishing, changing the sharing setting to public and reproducing the UXP project now works correctly. It no longer stays private. So basically, when you had produced a UXP project as private, and then you changed it to public, and you reproduced it and published it again, it would just stay private, which is a little bit frustrating, right? When you're trying to just make it public. When you remove segments in the structure, the changes now show correctly on the publishing page. So basically, if you're like, oh, I don't want all these segments anymore, it's too much hassle. Let me just remove them all or whatever. I don't need them. When you reproduce, it would just show the full structure list still as under the publication, even if you just republished it, right? And then a really good one, if you update permission definition in the portal, it will actually appear correctly in ClickLearn Studio, and it will apply in ClickLearn Studio when you reproduce, which is super nice. So just to quickly show you what that means is, so basically if you come into your portal, go to permission definition, and you set the permissions for the latest version of your projects, right? So let's say this Aspire thing up here, click on edit. And here I have my permissions. So I've changed my permissions here and say, okay, this other domain also needs to go there or whatever. That will actually apply to ClickLearn Studio. And when you reproduce, it will remember. It's not just for the published content. It actually goes back into Studio as well, which makes it a lot easier because beforehand, you had to first change the permission. That's fine. But then when you wanted to produce again, you had to change it one more time, but in ClickLearn Studio, right? Fixed. Beautiful. For settings, when you import an IFS scope after changing the project name, that also works as expected. You would create a project, work a bit on it, and say, hey, I need to change the name. I'm going to change the name, and also I need to import the scope I got from IFS, and that will then mess it up and not work. So that's fixed now. For published content, the AI avatar now speaks French. So c'est très magnifique. And the sitemap in the published content, it now respects the segmentation rules. So basically, when you go to the content in the bottom of a portal where you can see the full sitemap, it will now, if you're doing it through a segment, you can now only see whatever is you're supposed to see through the segment, right? So yeah, this makes a lot of sense if you want to fully segment all your content. And I know a lot of people are working for this, and I know it says in IFS, but it's actually for all systems. So when you are clicking on the normal web-based assist and you use the search feature in it, and you click on an item in there and click on assist me now, that now works. But of course, you must reproduce it first because it's part of the new producer as well. So you need to reproduce, and then you can use the assist again. For those of you that still are not on UXP or use a product that does not support UXP, or for some reason just use the regular assist, it's totally fine. For the portal, authors can now only see project details for the projects they have access to, and that includes dashboard, permission definitions, endpoints, and user groups and everything, right? So you have a little bit easier time doing project management, where people who log into your portal, like you just see me do changing permissions, right? I could only see the ones I have access to instead of all of it. If I was just an author that was added to a specific project rather than me being an admin, okay? And after you add a new domain, admins can now create users with that domain. Adding domains is not something you do yourself. That is something you ask us to do, and then we will add it for your license, right? For UXP, the panel no longer overlaps in the Salesforce tab, and you need to reproduce to fix that. The UXP Assist now encourages users to click inside field controls rather than clicking the next button. And in the UXP config, you can actually hide either the video or the assist in your recordings. So let's just go through those last two in ClickLearn itself, okay? So basically what that means is that you can come in here in the publishing template for a UXP project, go to UXP, and then you go to Advanced. And in here you have a few different new items. Hide next arrow. Basically, on steps, people are allowed to click next to go ahead and go back and stuff like that. You can actually hide it so that they have to follow the procedure. We had the issue where people, they don't understand that they have to click where the red hotspot is, that they're supposed to do, so they just click on the next arrow. And then they don't understand why the assist stops working, because if they didn't click on next, let's say if I didn't click on accounts over here, then the button new would not appear. So ClickLearn says, hey, I cannot find the button new. So that's one thing you can do. You can disable the next arrow. Do it where it makes sense. There are, of course, also some drawbacks to disabling it. Like if you click back and then want to go forward again, but you're not actually changing your going back and forth in your process, then it's a bit difficult if you don't actually follow the process whilst doing it, so it's hard to skip back and forth. So use it where it makes sense. Hide the video and hide the assist. So let's come into that. Let me go down here to UXP. Basically, you can hide this button here, or you can hide this button here. There are some customers that do not want the assist. There are some customers that do not want the video. Or you can just disable both, so you don't have any content whatsoever other than the written material here, right? So that's also an option for you. And I'm just going to quickly run through our connector-specific updates. And since the last release, we fixed several issues across different platforms. In LES, drop-down components can now record correctly. The details button now displays correctly in French for IFS. In Oracle HCM, Replay now correctly selects the correct card. In the sales order page in Automatica, then the search button is now recognized correctly. In finance operations, we have a replay for a type dropdown that is being fixed. You need to re-record it and replay it. Otherwise, you may have an issue where the custom ID may vary per user. Assists can now find dropdowns in IFS custom pages. You also need to re-record. In FNO, the module view now auto expands during the replay if it's been collapsed. So yeah, that's just the module menu on the left. I was pretty sure that there's already, but fine. In FNO, if the page open scroll to the left, it will automatically scroll to your recorded control during the replay. So this is for very wide scroll options where you have, let's say you have a table, you have some rows, you have a bazillion columns. Okay, so you have to scroll left and right to get there. It will be better at going to the position that you were. Okay. You know, that's it for our ClickLearn Attain 12.1.64.0 release. This update has many improvements, smarter automation, more accurate recording and playback behavior. So go ahead and update now to take advantage of the full features. And if you have any questions or feedback, we're always happy to help. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.